Welcome and thank you for attending. If you're not already aware, this is a CUFI on Campus webinar. My name is Hannah and I go to Middle Tennessee State University. I got involved with CUFI on campus last February through a on-campus tabling session. I'm joined by two other CUFI students who are helping to lead this event, and we represent thousands of other advocates from across the nation. The CUFI on campus mission is to inspire Christian student leaders to advocate for Israel and the peace of Jerusalem on college campuses across the United States. We have an amazing upcoming virtual conference called the Student Advocacy Leadership Training Conference in January. So stay tuned to hear more about this conference after the presentation. Also, we would want to take a moment to recognize our faculty on campus and the recent loss of Dr. William Watson from Colorado Christian University. Dr. Watson has always been a bedrock of support for our CUFI on campus family, and he has recently passed away. Please keep our CCU family in your prayers, and may Dr. Watson's memory be a blessing. With that in mind, I'll hand it off to Casey to introduce our speaker.
Hello, my name is Bridget from beautiful Laramie, Wyoming. I attend the University of Wyoming. I have the immense pleasure of introducing Holocaust survivor Irving Roth. Irving Roth was born in 1929 in Košice, Czechoslovakia. His family fled from Hungary and hid there until 1944 when he and his brothers were deported to Auschwitz. Of 4,000 Jews in his Auschwitz transport, only 300 survived the initial selection on the Auschwitz-Birkenau arrival platform. Irving is the director of the Holocaust Resource Center, Temple Judea of Manasseh, and served as an adjunct professor at the University of Maine. He is a recognized author and speaker on anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. He is also a frequent lecturer at CUFI events, churches, synagogues, colleges, and universities in the United States, Canada, and Europe. He has been featured in documentaries on HBO, the History Channel, and in CUFI's film Never Again. Please welcome Irving Roth.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak. This week is a particularly difficult week in a sense, because it is 82 years ago that the beginning of the end of the Jewish people of Europe, as we knew them, vanished, changed. What was it? It's referred to as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. On that night, over 1,000 synagogues were set on fire. Thousands of Jewish stores were looted. 30,000 Jews were arrested. About 100 Jews were murdered, all under the prodding of a government, a duly elected government by the people of Germany in 1933. This was November 1938. It changed the moral perspective of the universe. On that night, I was sleeping about 1,000 miles away in a country called Czechoslovakia, in my home with my parents, grandparents, my older brother. Went to sleep on the November 9th. When I woke up on November 10th in the morning, ready to go to school, I looked at my father's face. It looked different. It looked almost ashen. His eyes were worried. What happened? What tragedy befell our family? What befell is a tragedy for the Jewish people through all of Europe. Under the guidance and prodding of the government, that night was the beginning of the end of the Jewish people of Europe. It affected every person who was Jewish, but I dare say every other person who lived in Europe or maybe the world. This was done by the government of Germany. This was the newspaper coverage throughout the world. Jews were being murdered. Jews were being incarcerated. Jewish stores were looted. Synagogues burned. The world looked at that for a moment and did nothing. And so there was a test in a way by Germany for the rest of the world. What reaction will they have? What will the world do? Nothing was the answer. And so the green light was out there. We can do anything we want, particularly to the Jews, anytime we want it. And thus began the downward slope of Jewish life, my life in particular. I lived in a democracy in 1938. It was a beautiful country, but Jews and Christians and Gypsies living together in harmony. It was a model country of Europe. When it began in 1918, it was emulating the best of America. Freedom, opportunity for all. I lived in a house in a small city of about 6,500 people with my parents and grandparents and my brother. My father and my grandfather were in a business. They produced railroad ties, but the tens of thousands with a lovely life. The city itself was a beautiful modern city, particularly for the 1930s. It has paved sidewalks. It had a beautiful park, a beach, stores, 2 railroad stations, one for freight and one for personal use. By the time I was 6 years old, I began school in a public school, which turned out to be a brand new structure when I started, with Catholics and Protestants and Russian Orthodox and Jews and Gypsies living, working, going to school together. I liked school. I liked school for 2 reasons. One is that the school had a soccer team, and I liked to play soccer. It was my favorite thing to do, much better than worrying about math and writing or anything else. The other thing which happened that first day of school is I looked around my class. Many of the kids I didn't know. There's one particular person that suddenly caught my eye. She was the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life. And she was in my class. That was an added bonus. And so eventually I got to know her. By the 2nd or 3rd grade, I actually carried her books to and from school. We did homework together. It was a marvelous life. Lived in a beautiful house, lovely streets. But then things began to change. On that day, this fear. Because the Jews of Germany and Austria were being arrested. Over 1,000 synagogues were set on fire. Now, we were just neighbors, really. The country that I lived in was a neighborhood, neighboring country. And by then, by the way, by November of 1938, a piece of Czechoslovakia was already occupied by Germany with the consent of the world. Nobody did a thing about it. And so things began to get worse. By the spring of 1939, Germany, after acquiring a piece of Czechoslovakia in 1938, by 1939, it dismembered Czechoslovakia. Suddenly, the portion, which is the Czech Republic today, became part of Germany. The eastern part became part of Hungary. And where I lived became a new country. Being it's a new country, it had to have a government. And so a new government was formed. But this government took on all the characteristics of Nazi Germany with respect to the Jews. Since 1933, the Jews were being picked on in Germany. It started with the boycott of Jewish stores. Slowly, Jewish athletes could not participate in the 1936 Olympics. Jewish students were thrown out of school. And now began the same methods, the same idea in the country I lived in. One day, 1939, in the summer, I was going to play in the park with my friends, but I couldn't enter because no Jews were allowed. In the afternoon in the summer, I was going to go to the beach, swim there. Swim, play volleyball, basketball, ping pong, eat at the snack bar, go swimming. But I no longer could because I was a Jew. No Jews allowed. Very soon I had to be identified on the street. Now, mind you, it's a city of about 6,000 people. Most people knew each other. Everybody knew who Irving Roth was, or at least most of my friends certainly, and many of my parents or friends, relatives, even the policemen knew who I was. And on that day, in the summer of 1939, I had to be identified on the street as a Jew, not as Irving Roth. My identity as an individual was taken away. First, I had to wear a yellow band on my left arm. Later, a yellow star. So everyone can see and not even bother looking at my face. Say, there goes the Jew. The newspaper was full of articles about the evil the Jews had brought upon society and have been doing it for 2,000 years. All lies. In the newspaper, at the bottom of the first page, Slovakia is for Slovaks and not for Jews. They don't belong. They must leave. They must be gotten rid of. One day, my friend, that beautiful little girl that I adored, with whom I did homework, and by the way, I also helped her with math, no longer wanted to talk to me because I was a Jew. The propaganda, the nature of the propaganda was so intense that people become transformed. Here is a young lady of about 10 years old who knew me for years. Her parents told her not to talk to me because I was a Jew. And so things get even worse. By September of 1940, an event that happens throughout the whole northern hemisphere of the globe. Every student begins classes. And so I get up in the morning, off to school I go. I got to the gate of the school and the principal looked at me and said, "You can't go in because you're a Jew." On that day, all the Jewish students throughout the whole country, whether it be nursery school kids, kindergartners, college graduates, or getting their PhD, because they were Jews, they're all thrown out. Every Jewish teacher in every single school, including the universities, professors with PhD, if they were Jewish, they had no jobs. Soon the Jewish attorneys of Slovakia were no longer allowed to practice law. And then comes a moment affecting my family very directly, economically. Jews were no longer allowed to own a business. My father, in his wisdom, decided before this actually takes place that a non-Jew walks into his office and throws him out, he'll ask one of his Christian friends to take over the business. And this way, being he's a friend, he'll let him run the business, make the profits, and continue living economically just as before. And so my father's friend Albert gets to have his name on my father's business, gets to get his name on the stationery of my father's company. But my father is still running it. Life has not changed economically. The renutas are being shipped, money comes in, we live on it. But a couple of months go by, and one day Albert comes to see my father. And I ask him in a very nonchalant way, "How is business, Joe?" He says to my father. I says, "It's doing well. They're very, very busy. I really appreciate what you're doing for me, allowing me to run my business. You became a rescuer of my business for me, so I really do appreciate it. He says, well, I came to talk to you about that. After all, it is my business. But you know, Joe, you're good at what you're doing. You're in a very efficient operation. So from now on, you are the new manager. But I am the owner. The profits are mine. A friend, a man, a church-going man, a man that believed in God, paid his taxes, wouldn't hurt a fly. But taking away something from a Jew was not really part of the commandment in the Bible, thou shalt not steal. The Jews didn't belong. It belongs to Slovaks only. And so the Jews of Slovakia are economically oppressed too. Many of them can hardly eke out a living. But in 1939, September 1st, one other event took place, namely, Germany, after dismembering Czechoslovakia, attacked Poland. In a month, there was no Poland. But then, since Poland was now under German control, they attacked Belgium and Holland and France. All of Europe was under control of Germany and their allies, Italy, Hungary, Bulgaria, Nazi countries, and every place they were involved in. All these allies of Germany and Germany itself, anti-Jewish laws. Some more, some less. In Poland, the Jews were already in ghettos with a fence around it that the Jews had to build, with guards all over the place. Starvation. By June of 1941, Germany and its allies controlled all of Europe. Yes, there was Sweden, a little bit of a country, Spain, but most of the other countries of Europe were under control of Germany, Italy, Hungary, Austria, which actually became part of Germany also. The only people who were not being attacked in Europe was the Soviet Union, Russia, the Ukraine. Why? Because Germany and the Soviet Union had an agreement. Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement. Germany will not attack the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union will not attack Germany. At the end of June of 1941, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was totally unprepared. And Germany, together with Hungary and Slovakia, their armies marched into the Soviet Union, making tremendous progress day after day, week after week. Very soon they were 80 miles from Moscow, from the capital. But as you can imagine, there were Jews, lots of Jews living there. And you would imagine that the same kind of anti-Jewish laws were passed in every area in the Soviet Union where the Jews lived. But that's not what they did. What they did is gathered the Jews in towns and villages and cities of the Soviet Union, marched them out into the field or into the forest, and machine gunned them. Day after day, week after week, Jews were being murdered. Not just men, not just women, whole towns. In a period of 2 days, the city of Kiev was free of Jews. 35,000 Jews were murdered in 2 days by the units of the German army. By the end of 1941, about 500,000 Jews of the Soviet Union were murdered and buried in mass graves. But the objective of Germany with respect to the Jews was a total and complete annihilation of every single Jew. Over 10 million Jews lived in Europe, and the objective was to get rid of all of them. And here, by machine guns, they were able to get rid of, in about 6 months, about 500,000 Jews. And to achieve their goal, the purification of Europe, of all Jews, would take 10 years at that rate. And that was totally unacceptable. And so what they decided is to have a conference and see how we can move this process faster and less expensive, because after all, to murder by bullets, you needed machine guns, and you needed people who have to be paid for doing this arduous work of murder. And so they convened the conference on the 20th of January. The Brain Trust of Germany, high-ranking member of the German army, scientists, engineers, doctors, met in Wannsee, a suburb of Berlin. And given the question, how will we get rid of all the Jews very quickly and cheaply? This astute bunch of people, these people, 1/3 of who had PhDs, these people who are intellectual, cultured people, listen to classical music, enjoy the opera, in 90 minutes, came up with a solution. How are we going to murder all the Jews of Europe? Shortest possible time. We'll create death camps. Death camps will have two things in it. One is gas chambers, where you can put thousands of people into them, fill it with poison gas, and they'll be dead. And once the corpses are there, we then will build next to it or on top of it crematoria. And the Jews will be then put into the crematoria, and all that's going to be left of the Jews of Europe will be ashes. That was decided in 90 minutes on January 1942. By the summer of 1942, 6 death camps were already operational. And in my town in Slovakia, it's a town of about 2,000 Jews, there was a knock on every single Jewish home that night. It was a Friday night. Given 10 minutes to pack a bag, take the family under guard into the synagogue. The synagogue, whose seating capacity was about 450 people. Now there were 1,800 there. With no running water, no bathroom, and no air conditioning. 1,800 human beings, men, women, and children, babies crying, in a space where 450 seats used to be, with no bathrooms and no running water. 36 hours went by, and the Jews were marched out to the radio station. At the radio stations were cattle cars. My friends, my relatives, my acquaintances and neighbors who were Jewish were in these cattle cars, 80, 90, 100 to each car. There was no room to sit. There were no bathrooms. There was no running water. All my friends were on that train, leaving for destination unknown. My father and mother, my brother and I, my grandparents were left there with 200 other Jews, less than 10%, because they were still essential to the running of the city. The economy of the city could not be destroyed. So the 200 Jews were left there. 3 months went by, and my grandfather and grandmother were arrested. And we knew they'll disappear just like all the other Jews. And so we decided to escape to Hungary. But the Jews of Hungary were still at home. Well, at least their families were at home. The men were in a slave labor force attached to the Hungarian army. And so we got over the border to Hungary. By 1944, spring, Hungarian government became Nazi, fully, completely Nazi, and with full idea of destroying the Jews of Hungary too. And so in 53 days, 437,000 Jews of Hungary put into cattle cars to Auschwitz, the largest death camp. I was in one of those cattle cars with my grandfather and grandmother, my aunt, my cousins, 90 other people, standing room only. The train began to move. Oh, by the way, my parents were not with us because when we came to Hungary, my father and mother needed a job, so they could not stay with us. We were in a small village. They were in Budapest, in the capital. I had no idea what was happening to my parents. 3 days later, three days and 3 nights later, the train stops. It was nighttime. The doors were opened up. And I looked out the door. I saw guards with submachine guns telling us to get out. Form lines, take nothing with you. In the distance, I saw flames coming out of chimneys against the black sky. What is this place? What are they producing in these factories? Out of the 4,000 people that arrived that night, 300 were separated from the 3,700. I among the 300, my brother, my cousins. The 3,700 included my grandfather and grandmother, my aunt and my 10-year-old cousin. We marched to the buildings, and many of them were separated. We were told to get into the building, get undressed and take a shower. And they were given a bar of soap. And so did that, that's all under guard. And as they went into the shower room, with a big sign, bathhouse in German, were water faucets in the ceiling, shower heads. But doors were closed and locked, and no water came out. What came out through the ceiling, through holes in the ceiling, was poison gas, a material called Zyklon B, a cyanide-based gas. 20 minutes went by or so, and 1,000 women in this enclosure were dead, their bodies. My grandmother, my aunt, my 10-year-old cousin in one, my grandfather, and 1,000 other men in the second one, and 1,000 in the third, murdered and their bodies burned. 24 hours after I arrived in Auschwitz, I was still alive. My grandfather, my family, and 3,700 human beings were ashes. I was assigned to work. First, I was tattooed to tell me very clearly that that is an indelible mark of the fact that I am a prisoner, to do as they please. I wound up working with horses, plowing the fields and draining the swamps outside of Auschwitz. On the diet of black liquid in the morning, euphemistically called coffee, at noon some soup, and at night some bread. Hard labor. I was 15 years old, but I tried to survive. They had additional selections because many people could no longer work, so they need not to be fed, and therefore they had to be gotten rid of. Also, they selected a dose to die. I was lucky. I kept my strength up, kept on working. By February of 1945, January rather of 1945, the Russian army was 50 miles away. And so the decision was made to take the remnant, what was left of the people in Auschwitz, to march out on a death march for three days and 3 nights. I arrived in a new camp called Buchenwald. Here there was less food because it was built originally in 1937 for 5,000 prisoners. Now there were 60,000. A boiled potato every second day was wonderful. My brother was taken away. I never saw him again. The war is going on. It's April of 1945, and the war was over in May of 1945. And thus began the death marches again. I tried to hide because I knew what the death march was. By this time, I weighed 80 pounds or so, and I knew I can't march for very long. That morning, by the 10th of April, the last group of people were still alive, were still in the camp, I among them. Standing in formation, the guards were beginning to gather, ready to be marched out. And that morning, the siren went off, air raid, American nameplates overhead, all day long. The guards didn't want to be killed by an air raid, so they locked the place up, put the 5,000 volts into the gate, into the fence and the gate, making sure nobody can escape. And they went into bunkers. Oh, by the way, the bunkers had telescopes, so they could see what's going on inside. The air lasted all day long, and I survived another day. By next morning, things were not moving quite so fast, but the guards were still there. By noon, they disappeared. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 American soldiers walked into my barracks. Liberation. The Messiah just arrived. They walked into our barracks, and I was there with about 250 15-year-olds, scrawny creatures, hardly walking, dragging our feet, skeletons shuffling along. All they want to do is feed us, and they did. Want to take care of the kids as much as possible, as quickly as possible. I was no longer a prisoner. I'm going to reach my 16th birthday. I'm a human being again. War is over. Month goes by. What do I do? I'm 15 and a half years old. I'm in the middle of Germany, alone. What should I do? I decided with some other people that we will go back to our villages and towns, and hopefully if we survived, somebody else did too in the family. And so after traveling for about a week, first by truck, by the American Army, then by train, then walking because most of the tunnels and bridges were blown up, taking a ferry across some rivers, I got to the village from where I was taken. First person I saw, I asked them, did anybody from the Roth family return? And where are they living? He pointed to a house. I ran over, opened up the door. In the middle of the kitchen was my mother, who survived in Budapest with my father. She survived because a Christian family was willing to take him in. And the Jews of Budapest were being shot on the street, marched on a death march, or put into trains. The family itself was made up of a mother, daughter, and granddaughter. Also a son-in-law, but the son-in-law, of course, was not at home. He was in the Hungarian Nazi army. This wonderful lady, a nurse, took my parents in. Police came and looked for Jews. They didn't find them. They were hiding in a special hiding place in the one-bedroom apartment. Then one night, there's a knock on the door. Into the hiding place they go. The husband, the Hungarian Nazi soldier, comes home for 3 days. And in his house are 2 people hiding for 3 days. And so the wife told the husband, you know, it's going to be a little bit more crowded than before you left, because we have 2 extra people living with us who are hiding. They're very, very distant relatives. So you mustn't tell anybody, because if you do, a neighbor may find out. He'll go to the police. The police will come and turn the house upside down and inside out and break through it if necessary and kill him. So if you want to go to bed with me tonight, keep your big mouth shut. My parents survived because someone was willing to help. Someone said that what's going on is immoral. Human beings are being herded into cattle cars. Human beings are being shot on the street. for no other reason except who they are. This is immoral, unethical. If someone asks me to hide them, I must do that because I'm a moral person. I'm a religious person. And so my parents survived. 6 million Jews were murdered. Some survived in camps like I did. But they couldn't go back any place. Why? Because the neighbors didn't want them back. My father's friend Albert didn't want my father back. He got the business. He took it away from my father, sold it all, and made a fortune, didn't want to give back the money. The Christian family was living in my house. They didn't want to leave. There was no place for Jews. Hundreds of Jews were murdered after the war in Poland and other places. Nobody wanted us. There's no place to go. And so the Jews stayed in camps, displaced persons camp, run by the American army, the British army, and others. What did they do? Yes, they got fed by the American and British. Did they not go out onto the town and begin to murder people because they're the ones who murder them and their families? What they did is try to get out of there. But again, there was no place to go. America was still closed. Britain was closed. Even Australia was closed. We were very fortunate we were able to get out and come to America in 1947. But the Jews that were in displaced persons camps couldn't go anyplace until 1948. The country called Israel was formed. And so finally, after 2,000 Jews in exile, the Jews had their own place. And the issue of Jews being homeless will no longer exist. But unfortunately, there were countries that did not want that. 5 Arab armies attacked this new state called Israel. Fortunately, Israel was managing somehow, by miracle, hold back the armies most places and establish a state. The state began to flourish. Hard work. First, they lived in tents. Then they built houses, developed an economy. They had to have an army because they were threatened. Terrorism against the Jewish people. Today, 75 years later, the Jewish state is still being besieged by enemies. They have not managed to conquer the Jewish people by arms. So they decide they're going to do something more exotic, and that is convince the world that the Jews are evil. Yes, they have a state, but they should not be. It's an apartheid state, a state which practices discrimination, hatred, and yes, genocide. So far from the truth that it's not even funny. A country that gives citizenship to everyone, a country where the hospitals are there for everyone, where the buses are there, where the businesses are there, where 20% of the population is not Jewish, mostly Muslim, where 20% of the school system, the higher education system in Israel today has 20% of Muslims. And they call that apartheid. A high-ranking Palestinian official got the virus, the coronavirus, needed special help. What they did is called Israel, the finest hospital in the Middle East. An ambulance from a Jewish hospital in Jerusalem went out into Palestinian territory with a number of soldiers to make sure nobody attacks them, picked up this high-ranking official, brought him to Jerusalem, gave him maximum care. Unfortunately, he did not survive. And this people call apartheid. The Syrian civil war has been taking place for years. 400,000 people in Syria were killed and murdered. The health system was not working too well. So Israel put up a field hospital on the border between Syria and Israel, where people from Syria who had problems, who were shot, who were pregnant and difficulty giving birth, simply came over into this field hospital, taken care of by Jewish and non-Jewish doctors, and returned back home healthy. That people call genocide. I'm sure you have seen on your campuses, sometimes you have people who believe all this. There are even professors who teach hatred against the Jewish people too. All lies, fabrications, prejudice. And so I ask you to help the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people alone can fight. They fight, but they need help. They need the world to support the Jewish people. Fortunately, in America today, unlike in 1938 and 39, when the Jewish people were in trouble, today, there are close to 10 million Christians joined and banded together to support the Jewish state and the Jewish people. 10 million and growing. They do it through Congress. They do it through Senate. They do it through giving money and visiting Israel and supporting the Jewish people. And one of the things I ask you tonight, if you are not a member, please join. We, the Jewish people, need your help. You are the righteous of the world today. Like the wonderful lady in Budapest who saved my parents. We call her a righteous person. Today, joining CUFI or other organizations that help the Jewish people, that understand the difficulties they're going through, the terrorism, and the rockets that are being fired into cities in Israel. We need your help. And for that, I thank you. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Irving, so much for being willing to share your story with us and taking the time to be with us tonight. I do know you got to go somewhere. Do you have time for one question really quickly from the audience?
Certainly.
Okay.
I'll take two.
You'll take two? Okay, good. I can do that. Okay. So first I would say one that's often asked is, were you able to forgive people that happened to you? What does forgiveness even look like in a situation like this? And how were you able to move on?
Well, two separate issues. How was I able to move on? And the question of forgiveness. The word forgiveness is defined by the dictionary and thesaurus as wiping the slate clean and begin anew. Well, that's kind of difficult. And that's really not worthwhile because no one has changed. No one has learned anything. You assume it's all forgiven and we're good. That's not enough. What needs to be done, we need to reconcile. Those people who were involved in creating this evil and those people who did nothing, bystanders who didn't care, they need to understand what was happening. They must change. They must realize that this is evil. To do nothing is evil. When you see evil, they must understand that. Must re-establish harmonious relationship, caring for each other and living in harmony. And that's what I want to do. I want to reconcile. And I've reconciled with many. Not all. Some are still there to hate the Jews. There are countries today that want to murder the Jews. Iran wants the nuclear bomb so they can bomb Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and burn the Jews again. I can't reconcile with them, but I want to reconcile with everyone else. I would someday like to be able to reconcile with those countries like Iran, too, that recognize the evil, live in harmony. We can do that. How did I go on? In some ways, you might say that I want to take revenge. How do you take revenge? They wanted me to be dead, or they wanted me to become an animal, have no moral code, behave as an evil person because I was treated evilly, I was treated badly, I want to treat everybody else. No. You did not succeed, I said to the evil doers of the world. I'm going to remain a decent human being. I will work, I will raise a family, I'll have friends. I'm part of humanity. All I ask you to do is to join me as a human, not a psychopath.
That's so good. Thank you, Irving. I love your heart for reconciliation, for being willing to, like you said, continue on and, take revenge in the sense of continuing on with your life and not becoming an animal.
It's an antidote to evil. We need to have an antidote. Unfortunately, you can't just taking a shot. You sort of have to change. And so all I ask people of this world, I will speak until I'm blue in the face and beyond. Say, we can live together. All of us come to this earth the same way, between 7 and 9 months. None of us leave this earth alive. How will our generation and your generation be judged? How we treat each other. The biblical injunction, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, still holds today. And not just your neighbor. 36 times in the Bible, there's one particular idea is repeated 36 times. Do not do evil to the stranger, to the foreigner. Do not oppress him, just because he may not look identically like you or may not believe identically what you do. Do not oppress him. 36 times in the first 5 books of Moses. So I ask the people of the world, Christians and Jews and Muslims and Hindus, do not oppress the foreigner. Love your neighbors as yourself.
Amen. Thank you, Irving. Well, I know you're a busy man and you have another meeting to go to. So before we announce SALT, I will let you go. But thank you so much again for sharing your story and taking the time out of your night. We thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. The only thing I would suggest in your conversation, you may want to tell the people who listen that I do have a book that I wrote and it's available, and I'll send you the money and you'll take care of it, right?
Yes, we will.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Irving. Awesome.
See you.
And Caleb, I will let you take it from here and tell us more about SALT.
I would love to. Thanks, Lydia. Hi, everyone. My name is Caleb Britt, and I go to Biola University in Southern California. As we mentioned at the beginning of the program, we have our virtual Student Advocacy Leadership Training Conference, or SALT, coming up this January 23rd and 24th. At SALT, top students are equipped to advocate for Israel on campus. We're going to have so many incredible expert speakers presenting on topics that you won't hear anywhere else. What medical and technological wonders Israel produces, what is actually going on in the Middle East, the best ways to advocate during these uncertain times, and so much more. So check out the link that will be in the chat and also in the follow-up email for more info. Thanks again, Lydia.
Awesome. Thanks, Caleb. I want to close this out. Thank you again, everyone who attended. We have recorded this whole session, so if there's someone that wasn't able to make it that you want to get the recording to, let us know and we'll get that to you. And you'll also be getting a follow-up email, it should be tomorrow, with further information about the SALT conference and anything else concerning CUFI and campus. And just to give a shout out to the CUFI and campus staff that's on this call, we have Cherith Runyon, one of our regional coordinators, as well as Lydia Yazi, another regional coordinator. And then we also have Laura Villanueva, who is our executive assistant, CUFI and campus, I think. Yes. Okay. So I will close this out in prayer and I will let everyone go. Dear God, I just thank you for this day. I thank you for this opportunity for all of us to come together on this call and hear Irving's incredible story. Lord, I thank you for his bravery and just his ability to share his story with everyone who's willing to listen. And I just pray that every ear that heard his words would be inspired, Lord, and that we would go forth in the future and use this to combat anti-Semitism wherever we see it, God. And I just pray that you would give us that passion to share what we've heard today. I pray that you would bless Irving and his family, keep them safe, keep them strong. And I just pray that you would bless everyone as we depart from this call. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
And thank you guys.